So how are you guys doing today? Welcome aboard the next video. I'm your host, Nick the Sailor. So today we're going to be talking about the top 10 racing games on classic generational systems that are Generation 6 and back. Now like I said, I actually wanted to do this kind of like a tribute to Paul Walker since me and him share the same birthday in September. We kind of have a tradition in my house where we watch the Fast and the Furious series. So I would like to actually do a series talking about some of the best of the best racing games from the old generations all the way up on forward. So this top 10 list will go from old all the way up to the newest to Generation 6. So let's go ahead and get started.
Press start.
Fatality.
Get over here!
Hadouken! It's me, Mario! Here we go!
So coming in at number 10 would be Roadblasters, made by Atari Games for the arcade, the NES, and the Sega Genesis. The version that we're going to be talking about here is going to be the Sega Genesis version. And this one loose is usually about $6 and complete in box about $14.50. Now the thing about Roadblasters is that it was of course originally an arcade game. It was a whole hell of a lot of fun. You would get weaponry on your vehicle and you would be able to blast your way through. Now you did have to collect gas as you went through, racing through all of that. And you would have to press the forward button in order to speed up. And you can't come to a complete stop because, well, you're racing against your gas and you're also racing against time. So those are two things that you have to worry about. Crashing into things does not kill you in this game. In actuality, it just makes you stop and you have to speed up again. But it's very detrimental if you try and finish the race as fast as possible. And you do get weapons that come in every once in a while. Now, the reason why we are going to focus on the Sega Genesis version is because the graphics and everything is way better than on the NES version, but you can get either one if you wish, and that is actually a good game to get on your wish list. So coming in at number 9 is Outrun, made in 1986 by Sega AM2. Of course, there was an arcade version. They made it on the Sega Genesis and the Sega Master System. The version that we're going to focus here is on the Sega Genesis version, which was the better one out of all the console versions that they made. And a loose version of this one usually goes for about $23, so you know it's good. Now, Outrun, if you see the footage here, a lot of people will actually associate this with the Cruisin' USA series, Cruisin' World, whatever, I think it was the Cruisin' World Tour or something like that. But that's where they basically got the idea, was from the Outrun game. This game, of course, a lot of us are familiar with it. I played it a lot in the 90s as a kid in the arcades, and this game was a lot of fun. Especially when you hit things and your characters fall out and land on their butts and they bounced around. It was actually pretty interesting. It was a lot of fun, quite challenging. There were alternate endings when you reached the end depending on which end of the track you ended up on, and it was a lot of fun. Definitely a game that I would suggest getting as well. Coming in at number 8 is Hard Driven by Atari Games. It was made in 1989 for the arcade, and then they made a Sega Genesis version in 1991. A complete in-box version of that would be about $5.50, which is something to really look out for. Hard Driven was a game that was actually made to try and be a bit realistic to certain extents. I mean, going in a loop-to-loop doesn't really seem too realistic, but it is physically possible. You can actually see that happening with Hot Wheels has done a few stunts with that and everything. It's pretty cool. You can check those out on YouTube. They got videos of that where they do stunts that with their Hot Wheels that they normally would do, but with real cars. Back to the game at hand, Hard Driven. The reason why I say realism is because when you try and go over jumps, you can't go too fast, because then the front of your vehicle would tip down too far and you would crash. So it's a really difficult game and it's a challenging game. So if you want a challenge, this is actually a pretty good game to get. Coming in at number 7 is Sega Rally Championship. Now this one was made by AM5 Arcade in 1994. It was ported over to the Sega Saturn in 1995 by AM3. And you'll see AM3's logo in the press start menu. And another thing that I should also mention is that was later on ported over to the PS2 by AM3 as well. There are other platform versions to this, but we're going to focus on the Sega Saturn version. A loose copy of this will usually run about $8 and a complete box about $15. Now, I really like this game right here because I actually did play kinds of games that were just like this. Now, I've never actually owned a Sega Saturn, but I have played games similar to this on PlayStation 1. And this game is actually quite a bit of fun. These are real races that happen in real life, of course. A lot of us know this already, but this one was really interesting because it was one of the first games that you could actually sit there and do dirt racing with. And it was just so much fun. I mean, going around corners and everything, it was quite realistic. Although there, when you pay attention to the background, it's kind of like you're just floating in space, but it was still a lot of fun. It was really relatively a really great game. And this one was what kind of set the mark for what other games should do if they're going to do rally racing games. So coming in at number 6 is Daytona USA, made by Sega AM2 art for the arcade in 1993, and later for the Sega Saturn in 1995. Now, the Sega Saturn version would usually run you about $9, complete in box if I remember correctly. Now, the thing about Daytona USA, it's typically, the racing cars that you would see in the USA for NASCAR, things of that nature. Basically, every vehicle is the same, they just have different decals and aesthetics. This game is quite fun as well. It's just your typical racing game. You're just trying to beat everybody else and, just trying to go through the works and everything like that. Now, I do promise these games will get more interesting as we go on into this list, and they're going to get quite tricky because I do have an honorable mentions portion to this because there's just way too many games to go through. I'm trying to keep this under 15 minutes so it's not too long. So coming in at number 5 is Destruction Derby 2. Made by Reflections Interactive for the PlayStation 1, a complete in box version can run anywhere between $8 and $10. Now I'm still on the lookout for this game, and I have found it a few times. I already met my budget for the month when it came to collecting, but this game I can promise you would be worthwhile. And the reason why I recommend this game because I was actually a kid when this game came out, I think my early teens, and I played the living crap out of this game like it was going out of style. And I love this game and the concept of it because your vehicle can take damage as you race. So as you go on, your wheels can actually fall off. Your car can get so damaged that you just can't even complete the race. And then you have also demolition derby arenas that you can go into, and they're quite difficult because, well, you can get just demolished in doing those. It was a really new concept as far as I was aware at the time as a kid because I'd never seen that before. And I thought it was just so cool that you could race a car and just take so much damage until your vehicle was just shot to crap and you couldn't run anymore. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Now moving on to number 4 is going to be the Driver series. Now for the PlayStation 1, the original Driver where it all started. Driver was made by Reflections Interactive and Crawfish Interactive. A complete in box version of this would be about $6. Now, I did play this game when it first came out, and I thought it was like one of the coolest things ever. And getting through the beginning instructional tutorial was a bit of a pain in the butt. I mean, anybody who's played that game understands where the pain was when it came to the start. But once you got past that part, it picked up from there, and it was a lot of fun. If I remember correctly, you could actually end up in Cuba, and I thought that was like the coolest thing. And this game, if I remember correctly, was before you could actually get out of your vehicle, because in later on Driver series, if I remember correctly, you could actually get out. But this was before you could do that. And it's a really good series. I really do suggest this one. Now, coming in at number 3 will be Project Gotham Racing for the original Xbox. Project Gotham Racing was made by Bizarre Creations, only on the Xbox, the original one. A complete box version of this would be anywhere between $2 to $3. It's supposed to be the successor to Metropolis Street Racer on the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the interesting thing about this game is it's actually a lot of fun. There is drifting in it, and I think this was one of the first games that allowed drifting in their games. It does have a kudos system that's put into it. Now, what that is when you overtake cars, you get kudos. When you overpassing other cars, you jump over other cars. When you're hitting bumps, things of that nature, you get kudos. What kudos basically is just points for cred, street cred. The more points you get, the more cars you can unlock. And you can also start unlocking tracks as well, different racing tracks. And another way to unlock racing tracks is to actually win races. but when it comes to winning races, it doesn't really do much for you for unlocking cars. So you have to gain kudo points in order to unlock cars. And that is a really cool concept. This is definitely a game that I would come back and play over and over again. It's a lot of fun. Now, something else is that this was also a launch title on the Xbox to try and get it noticed. And of course, as we all know, the Halo series is the one that really did that. But Project Gotham Racing was another one of those series that did extremely well in getting Xbox out there and noticed. So coming in at number 2, this one was really difficult because I decided to go with Midnight Club and I had a hard time picking which one. So I have 2 Midnight Clubs at the number 2 slot. So the first one we're going to talk about is Midnight Club 2, and this one was made by, of course, Rockstar. You can never go wrong with Rockstar, as I've said in many of my videos. And a complete box version of this for the original Xbox is $4, and the PS2 is the same price. The really cool thing about this game, in order to have, if you want to have a lot of fun, just to go around and goof off, is you can actually go in and insert a cheat code that is called Rimbuk, or RIMBUK. And what that does is it unlocks the SLF 450X. And it basically looks like a jet on wheels. It's like an F-18. I mean, it's like ridiculous. It shoots rockets and bullets and all sorts of things. It's insane. I remember seeing that as a kid, and I got the cheat code from word of mouth back then, because back then there was only 2 ways to get cheat codes, and that was from someone either you knew that knew the code or magazines. And that was like the coolest thing that I've ever seen. You just go around. It was a free roam map. It was one of the first times you ever got, and that game was seriously a lot of fun, especially with the customizations in the game as well. It's not just the cheat codes too. So in the other number 2 slot, we're going to put Midnight Club 3, of course, because it needs to be recognized, and Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition was also, of course, made by Rockstar. Rockstar owns the series, they've created the series. A complete box version of this for the PS2 would be up to $10, and the original Xbox version would be about $5.50. Now, of course, the customization in this is absolutely amazing. It's freaking awesome. I love it. And the racing concept in this game is really cool. This one really kind of falls into the line of the storyline, much like the Fast and Furious franchise. And of course, as we go on, I'm going to talk about my number 1 spot, probably the number 1 best game that kind of really goes in depth with that kind of concept. If anybody is going to mention in the comments section, well, what about Midnight Club Los Angeles? Well, that was in Generation 7 gaming, so that's why I don't mention it here. But I will mention it just for a split second because it is a really good game too, you mentioned. Now, of course, we're going to go ahead and go into the honorable mentions before we get to number 1. So the first honorable mentions would be Juice 2 Hot Import Nights. This one was made by Juice Games. We're focusing on the PS2 version on this one. Complete in box would be about $6. Another honorable mention would be Need for Speed Underground 2. I want to bring this one up. It's made by EA Black Box. Complete in box version for the PS2 is about $9, and original Xbox version about $7. Now, the reason why I want to bring this one up, in this version you could actually customize the trunk to have speakers and stuff in it. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Burnout series. The Burnout series, oh my god, you gotta have the Burnout series, at least Burnout Takedown, Burnout 3 Takedown. That was probably the best in the franchise. So, that's definitely something worth picking up. Now, of course, the honorable mentions, we cannot sit here and have honorable mentions talking about the Fast and Furious without actually talking about the Fast and the Furious arcade. The arcade was made in 2004 by Raw Thrills. You go over humps, you do flips, and it's like, what the crap. Still pretty cool of a concept when it comes to an arcade. The next honorable and last honorable mention would be the Fast and Furious game for the PS2. Made in 2006 by Eutechnix. God damn, I can't even pronounce that name. Eutechnix. Complete in box version for this one's about $7. This game wasn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, it got like 6 out of 10, which was mediocre. It was a mediocre game. So let's go ahead and move on to number 1. So coming in at number 1 will be Need for Speed Carbon. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking, what about Most Wanted? Because that game was the crap. And I cannot disagree with you, that is a great game. But we're going to focus on Need for Speed Carbon because, man, I got a few reasons. This one, of course, made by EA Canada for the PS2 and Xbox and a multitude of other consoles. A complete in-box version of this would be $5 for both systems. Now, Need for Speed Carbon basically took what Most Wanted did, and they added a little bit more, and they took away some. Like in Need for Speed Most Wanted, they had a lot of cop chases and things of that nature. They kind of toned that down a bit because I will admit it did get freaking annoying when I was playing Most Wanted, and I did beat that game, but it got pretty dang difficult when it got up there in the difficulty levels with the bosses. I mean, once you were getting up close to like 2 bosses left, it got freaking ridiculously hard. So I'm kind of glad in Carbon they took that down a notch, because it was getting ridiculously hard. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this game. There's a lot of tuners, there was a lot of customization in Carbon. Absolutely amazing game. Absolutely love it. Now, of course, Need for Speed Carbon, a lot of people I talked to, that's their favorite when it comes to the old generations for Need for Speed. And I kind of agree with them. At points, I can understand how Need for Speed Most Wanted would be a better one. But me specifically, I'm kind of torn between the two. I couldn't really decide on that. And that's why I kind of want to say that Need for Speed Most Wanted also deserves to be in the #1 spot along with Need for Speed Carbon. So that does it for this list, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. If there's any games that you would love to have me cover, if there's any games you think I missed and you want to add to it in the comments, go ahead. Now, as always, remember 22 and stay classy, bros.
Continue.